The Hirogen warriors gaped in disbelief as the primitive human weapons tore through their enemies like ancient gods of death. They had scoffed at the simple kinetic rifles until they saw them in action. Isaac Evans stood at rigid attention before Ymir, the towering reptilian Hirogen commander of the exploration vessel Gralthak. The grizzled human soldier was the only Terran aboard, reluctantly serving as part of the expedition tasked with making first contact with an uncharted alien species. "Your crude firearms are an insult to Hirogen weaponry," Ymir said, eyeing Isaac's weathered Gauss rifle and revolver sidearm with disdain. "We shall handle this mission. You are here as a formality." Isaac bit back a retort. His guns had never failed him through countless battles. He methodically checked his gear, rifle, grenades, and the high-caliber revolver passed down by his great-grandfather. As the Gralthak approached the target planet, Ymir broadcast a message of peace. Suddenly alarms blared as dozens of surface batteries opened fire, bracketing the ship with superheated plasma. "Evasive action," Ymir bellowed. "Charge weapons!" But a direct hit destroyed the power core, plunging them into darkness as the crippled Gralthak spiraled helplessly towards the surface. They were going down, and only Isaac's primitive human weapon stood between them and certain death at the hands of a hostile alien force. The Hirogen were about to learn just how deadly human ingenuity could be. The Gralthak ploughed into the planet's crust with a thunderous impact, gouging a deep furrow across the surface. Its hull cracked open, flames belching from the ruined engines. Isaac coughed, pulling himself from the tangled wreckage. Ymir was beside him, clutching a bloody gash in his side. A few other Hirogen survived, stumbling out into the open. Weapons fire peppered the ground around them. The aliens had them surrounded, plasma bolts crackling through the air. Isaac grabbed his rifle. "On me! Form a perimeter!" The Hirogen rallied to him, setting up a defensive circle. Isaac passed out his extra ammo and grenades. He had to act fast. Hunkering down, they'd be overrun in minutes. Isaac charged from the wreckage, sprinting between rocks and debris. A plasma bolt singed his hair. He slid into cover, then leaned out and fired. The Gauss rifle cracked like thunder. An alien toppled. A fist-sized hole blasted through its armored shell. Isaac advanced, popping up to shoot from the hip. His rifle pulped skulls and shredded limbs. "Forward!" Isaac barked, waving the survivors on. They pushed ahead, the human point man an unstoppable engine of destruction. The aliens broke and ran. "Hold this ground," Isaac ordered as they reached the wrecked ship. "Fortify the position." Under his command, the Hirogen worked to salvage hull plating and debris, building makeshift barricades. The firing died down. Isaac grabbed intact computer parts, hastily assembling a crude long-range transmitter. They needed backup, and fast. As he fiddled with the wiring, Ymir limped over, face twisted in pain and confusion. "Why do you fight so hard for us? We treated you like a primitive, yet you bleed for us. Why?" Isaac didn't even look up from his work. "I took an oath. You're my commanding officer. We're in this together, like it or not." In the distance, hidden from sight, the hostile aliens intercepted the humans' transmission. Reinforcements, armored transports, air support, all underway to wipe the intruders off the face of their planet. As the dust settled around the fortified crash site, Isaac knew he couldn't just sit tight and wait for the aliens to hit them in force. He gathered the fittest Hirogen and ventured out to scout the enemy's positions and numbers. They crept through the rocky terrain, keeping low and marking troop locations on their map pads. As they neared a large encampment, Isaac signaled a halt, spotting movement through his scope. What he saw made his blood boil. Dozens of smaller aliens, clearly civilians, were corralled like cattle in the center of the camp. Soldiers beat them savagely with electrified prods, their anguished cries carrying on the wind. A few were dragged into a large tent, emerging later bruised and bloodied. Interrogation. Isaac's finger itched on the trigger, but they were outnumbered 50 to 1. A frontal assault would be suicide. He weighed his options, the old familiar anger rising in his gut, memories of similar injustices back on Earth. Innocent caught in the crossfire. He couldn't let it stand. Ordering the Hirogen to stay concealed, Isaac belly-crawled to the camp's edge. He drew his combat knife, the black blade invisible in the shadows. Isaac slipped behind the first guard. The knife found the gap between helmet and collar. He lowered the body gently. 2 more guards went down without a sound, Isaac's hands a blur. He pilfered a silenced sidearm from one's holster. Sighting down the barrel, he put neat holes through the skulls of the remaining sentries. Isaac cut the prisoners' bonds, motioning for silence. He couldn't understand their warbling speech, but their wide eyes spoke volumes. They huddled around him, seeking protection. One scratched crude drawings in the dirt. Stick figures gathered around a flame, shaking hands. Then a cloud of figures with spiked clubs trampling the first group. The prisoners had tried to make peace, and been butchered for it. An old anger stirred in Isaac's chest. He gathered them up and slipped out of the camp, signaling the Hirogen scouts. They looked askance at the ragged band of aliens, but said nothing, falling into step as Isaac led them back to base. Ymir limped from the Gralthak's wreckage, his face twisted in rage. "What is the meaning of this? Why have you brought them here?" Isaac met the taller alien's glare. "They're civilians, non-combatants. They were tortured, beaten." "No. Our duty is to protect the innocent, or we're no better than the monsters who shot us down." The 2 leaders locked horns as the human and Hirogen survivors looked on. The freed aliens cowered back, ready to bolt. One stepped forward, raising its spindly arms for calm. The alien paced over to a flat stretch of mud, its 3-fingered hands a blur. It sketched a sprawling network of tunnels, tapping them urgently. A path through the mountains, behind their attackers, a way to flank them. End this. Ymir glanced at Isaac. The human met his gaze unflinching. The Hirogen leader exhaled slowly, looking back at the expectant alien. Finally he nodded. But before they could examine the map further, a klaxon split the air. Sentries yelled warnings, panic in their voices. On the horizon, a great host crested the ridge, rows upon rows of armored vehicles, troop transports, and hovering gunships. A full battalion, their hulls gleaming under the harsh alien sun. The ground trembled under their approach. Plasma cannons swiveled, locking on the crash site. Panels slid back, revealing racks of missiles. The air crackled with the charge of 1,000 primed weapons. Ymir and Isaac shared a tense glance, hands white-knuckled on their firearms. The battle was about to begin. The ground shook as the alien armored column thundered closer, the bone-jarring booms of their cannons growing louder with each passing second. Isaac's mind raced, calculating distances, angles of approach, kill zones. He turned to the ragtag band of human and alien survivors, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Listen up. I want the civilians and wounded loaded up with every scrap of food, water, and medicine we've got. Anything useful that'll fit in a pack. Hustle it into the tunnels now." The aliens leapt to obey, scrambling to gather the precious supplies. Isaac pulled Ymir aside, the towering reptilian's face pale with pain, but his eyes still fierce. "I need you leading the retreat, Ymir. Keep them moving, no matter what you hear behind you." "I will not abandon you, human," Ymir growled, hefting his salvaged plasma rifle. "I am Hirogen. I do not run from a fight." Isaac clasped the alien's shoulder, meeting his gaze. "I'm counting on you. Get our people to safety." He turned to the handful of Hirogen still able to fight, along with a few of the fittest prisoners. "The rest of you on me. We're going to buy them some time." They moved quickly, Isaac directing them to pile the Gralthak's wreckage into barricades and choke points. He rigged demolition charges at key structural points, praying the old explosives were still viable. As they worked, he handed out his remaining grenades and showed the aliens how to arm and throw them. Isaac had never trained someone on human weapons in the heat of battle before. He found himself marveling at the speed with which the desperate fighters picked up the skills. Necessity was a powerful teacher. The thrum of the alien engines was like a physical force now, the air thrashing around them. Isaac and his band hunkered down behind the makeshift fortifications, weapons trained on the kill zone. The first alien APC rounded the bend, its bulbous armored frame skimming over the rough terrain. Isaac breathed out, the world narrowing to the barrel of his rifle and the red glow of the vehicle's viewport. He squeezed the trigger. The demolition charges erupted in a maelstrom of fire and shrapnel, turning the APC into a tumbling ball of shredded meat and metal. The detonations triggered a rock slide, great boulders crashing down to block the path behind the vehicle. Buying time. More APCs clambered over the smoking wreckage, hatches slamming open to disgorge squads of troops. They charged, plasma rifles spitting blue fire. Isaac and Ymir opened up simultaneously, picking off the leaders. The aliens crumpled. "Grenades!" Isaac bellowed, lobbing one of the fist-sized charges into the massing soldiers. The Hirogen and prisoners followed suit, alien arms hurling human grenades with inhuman force. The explosions sent sprays of rock chips and seared carapace scything through the enemy ranks. They fell back, momentarily disoriented. Isaac pressed the attack. "With me. Keep up the pressure." He vaulted the barricade, firing from the hip, Ymir and the others fanning out beside him. They pushed forward, leapfrogging between cover, using the wrecked vehicles as bulwarks against the increasing plasma fire. Isaac dropped into a slide beside a tread-torn APC, Ymir crashing down next to him. The big alien was panting, his wounds reopened and weeping, but his aim was true, each burst of fire dropping an enemy. "Hell of a shot, big guy." Isaac slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. Ymir bared his fangs in what might have been a grin. A plasma bolt exploded against their cover, globs of molten metal splattering Isaac's armor. He cursed, racking the bolt, just as another alien crested the APC's ruined cabin, rifle leveled at his face. Ymir moved faster than Isaac could blink. The Hirogen's arm shot out, snatching the creature by the throat and yanking it off its feet. Ymir pulled it close, his own rifle forgotten, until he was eye to eye with the thrashing alien. "Catch!" Ymir heaved, sending the soldier pinwheeling through the air towards Isaac. The human brought his rifle up, sighting down the barrel at the flailing, terrified creature. His finger tightened on the trigger. They fought on, holding the line as the thunder of the civilian refugees' passage slowly faded into the tunnels at their back. Alien bodies piled high around the wreckage as each new wave broke against the defenses. But the enemy kept coming. An ominous whine filled the air, the pitch setting Isaac's teeth on edge. He looked up, dread coiling in his stomach. Attack ships, their frames bristling with racks of bombs and missiles. The enemy commander wasn't taking chances anymore. They were going to bury the crash site and every living thing in it. Isaac keyed his comms, yelling to be heard over the rising cacophony of battle. The Hirogen and prisoners obeyed, those still on their feet hauling the wounded, as they sprinted for the dark entrance that marked safety. Isaac and Ymir laid down covering fire, their weapons growing hot in their hands as they poured rounds into the attacking soldiers. The whine became a scream. Missiles detached from their hardpoints, lancing down on pillars of white fire. The first slammed home, throwing up a geyser of pulverized rock and twisted metal. The shockwave hurled Isaac from his feet. He rolled with the impact, fetching up against a slab of debris. His head swam, ears ringing, the world tilted crazily. He forced himself up on his hands and knees, shaking his head to clear it. The Hirogen lay a few meters away, his lower body hidden beneath a mound of rubble. Isaac stumbled to him, firing one-handed at the aliens trying to press forward through the bombardment. He reached Ymir, letting his rifle hang on its sling as he scrabbled at the rocks pinning the big alien. Ymir groaned, his eyes glassy with shock. Isaac redoubled his efforts, throwing his back into it. The boulder rolled aside, revealing the crushed ruin of Ymir's legs. Bright red blood mixed with the pulverized stone. Too much blood. Another missile struck, the fire and noise stealing the breath from Isaac's lungs. He bent over Ymir, shielding the alien with his own body as the debris rained down around them. Ymir gripped the human's arm with crushing force, dragging his face down next to his own. "You must Get them out. Emir's words were labored, each one an effort. His eyes started to lose focus. Please, let my death have meaning. Isaac clasped the alien's hand, feeling the strength, the life ebbing from the saurian flesh. He wanted to rage, to deny what was happening, but there was no time. The Hirogen's eyes slid closed, his chest shuddering with one last rattling breath. His hand went limp in Isaac's grip. Isaac bowed his head, tears cutting trails through the grime on his face. The ground lurched, nearly pitching him onto his side. The bombs were getting closer. The tunnel entrance loomed behind him, a rectangle of inviting darkness. He laid Emir's hand on the alien's chest, then reached out to close those unseeing eyes. Isaac pushed himself to his feet, his human eyes blazing with an inhuman fury as he unholstered his massive revolver. He turned to the oncoming aliens, the gun bucking in his grip, roaring his grief and rage at the uncaring sky. Then he ran, plunging into the tunnel, the blackness enveloping him as the world ended at his heels. Isaac stumbled from the tunnel mouth, his eyes stinging in the sudden glare of the alien sun. The small band of survivors huddled around him, nursing wounds and shell shock. Dense jungle stretched before them, a riot of colors and strange fauna. The escaped prisoners urged them onward, picking a path through the undergrowth. Isaac helped the wounded along, his own battered body protesting every step. An hour's march brought them to a hidden rebel encampment, camouflaged huts and tents nestled in a natural hollow. Wary guards leveled crude rifles, but the prisoners called out and the weapons lowered. In the central clearing, a grizzled alien stepped forward. His carapace was scarred, one eye a milky ruin. He sized up Isaac and the other survivors. "I am Kraltak," he rasped in halting galactic common, "leader of this cell. My people say you fought the Zorkesh, freed them. Why?" Isaac met his inscrutable gaze. "No one should be a slave. Where I'm from, we believe in freedom, equality." Kraltak clicked his mandibles. "The Zorkesh Empire has held our world in its grip for generations. We would be free of them." Isaac looked around at the encampment, the ramshackle equipment, the poorly armed rebels. He saw in them an echo of another revolution, centuries past on a distant Earth. He nodded to a pile of damaged weapons, Zorkesh design but lower spec than the ones he'd faced. "I can get those working again, maybe improve them, and I can teach you some of humanity's dirty fighting tricks, urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, stuff the Zorkesh won't see coming." Kraltak considered this, his chitinous brow furrowed. Then he stuck out a claw-tipped hand. "We welcome your aid. What are you called, human?" "Isaac. Staff Sergeant Isaac Evans, UEMC." He clasped the alien's hand firmly. In the days that followed, Isaac threw himself into the rebel cause. He taught the alien fighters human martial arts, drilled them in fire and maneuver tactics. He stripped the captured Zorkesh weapons, jury-rigging power packs and splicing more rugged human alloy into the frames. As he worked side by side with the rebels, he learned more of their people's plight, the precious mineral wealth beneath their world's crust, the Zorkesh's ruthless exploitation enslaving the populace, the grim calculus of an empire that saw this world and its people as just another equation to balance. Isaac's jaw tightened as he listened, the old anger stirring. This fight, light years from Earth, suddenly felt very personal indeed. One sweltering afternoon, as Isaac schooled a cadre of rebels in the finer points of shaped charge explosives, a scout came pelting into the camp. He jabbered excitedly to Kraltak, waving a data slate. The rebel leader stomped over to Isaac, a fierce light in his remaining eye. "The chance has come," he said, mandibles quivering. "A Zorkesh general is touring the Kravnak mining complex. With a strike there, we could cut the head from the beast." Isaac studied the flickering schematic on the data slate. The sprawling facility was a hard target, bristling with automated defenses and elite troops. A frontal assault would be suicide. But there was an alternative. A single infiltration team slipping in through the ore conveyors, planting a bomb on the facility's main reactor. The explosion would vaporize the general and his entourage, cripple the mine's output. "I'll lead the mission," Isaac said. "My team, my responsibility." Kraltak's eye narrowed. "This is our most crucial strike. Why should we trust it to an alien, to a human?" Isaac held the alien's gaze unflinching. In that moment, he saw all the doubt, the generations of pain the Zorkesh boot had ground into Kraltak and his people. That night, in the shimmering light of the twin moons, Isaac knelt before Kraltak and the assembled rebels. The alien leader intoned the ancient words of the blood oath, his voice rumbling in the still air. Isaac felt the white-hot kiss of the brand against his flesh, the rebel sigil searing into his shoulder. He added his voice to the chant, tasting the coppery tang as he bit his tongue, letting his blood mingle with the alien soil. He rose, the pain a bright lance, the rebels around him raising their fists in salute. He was one of them now, unto death, and tomorrow they would strike their first true blow against the Zorkesh. As the brand cooled against his skin, Isaac thought of Emir's sacrifice, of the Hierogen's last words. He would not let that sacrifice be in vain. The Zorkesh would learn the price of their cruelty, and a free people would teach it to them. Even if Isaac had to burn their whole empire down to do it. Isaac slipped through the shadows of the alien mining complex, the weight of his Gauss rifle, a comforting presence in his hands. Beside him, Kraltak and the rebel infiltration team crept forward, their tread near silent on the metal grating. They ghosted past a pair of Zorkesh sentries, 2 quick thrusts of Isaac's combat knife, and the guards crumpled without a sound. "Control room's up ahead," Isaac whispered into his combead, linked to Kraltak's team on the far side of the complex. "Converge on my mark." Kraltak clicked an acknowledgement. Isaac held up a fist, halting his squad in the shadows of a massive ore processor. He peered around the corner, glimpsing the control room's reinforced blast door, a pair of elite Zorkesh guards standing sentry. "Mark!" The rebels moved as one. A volley of silenced slugs dropped the guards before they could raise the alarm. Isaac's team rushed forward, stacking up on one side of the blast door. Through the viewport, he could see the Zorkesh general barking orders at a phalanx of officers and technicians. Isaac glanced left. Kraltak's team was in position, the alien rebel raising his fist to mirror Isaac's own signal. They were ready. A klaxon split the air. Red light strobed, bathing the corridor in pulsing crimson. The control room blast door slammed shut with a resounding clang. "They know we're here," Isaac snarled into his calm. "Hit them hard." But the Zorkesh were already boiling out of adjoining corridors, plasma rifles spitting blue fire. Bolts stitched the walls around the rebels, flash-boiling steel and stone. A slug took Isaac in the shoulder, spinning him half around. He hit the deck, rolling into cover behind a steel cargo container. But there were too many. For every alien that fell, 2 more surged forward, laying down a withering hail of plasma bolts. Isaac's team was pinned down, unable to advance. Across the corridor, he saw Kraltak's squad similarly hammered, rebels falling under the onslaught. Isaac gritted his teeth, fury and desperation warring within him. He looked to his soldiers, saw the fear in their eyes. They believed in him. He couldn't let them down. "On me!" Isaac roared, bursting from cover. "For freedom!" He charged, Gauss rifle bucking as he fired from the hip. Precise bursts dropped Zorkesh left and right, their smoking corpses piling in the corridor. His rebels rallied behind him, a ragged battle cry rising from their throats. Isaac vaulted a barricade, driving his rifle butt into a Zorkesh's face. The alien's head snapped back, ichor spraying. Isaac shoved past, opening a path to the control room door. He slapped a breaching charge from his webbing onto the reinforced metal, thumbing the detonator. The explosion shook the corridor, peeling the door back like a rotten fruit. But the control room was empty, a hole blasted in the back wall. The general was gone. "Kraltak!" Isaac shouted into his comm. The general rabbited, "Converge on the breach." He shouldered into the control room, sweeping for targets. Behind him, the sounds of battle reached a crescendo as Kraltak's squad broke through. A flurry of plasma bolts and rebel slugs ripped through the Zorkesh rear, catching them in a devastating crossfire. Isaac rushed to the blasted hole, peering into the gloom of a narrow access tunnel. He glimpsed the generals retreating back, a cadre of bodyguards clustered around him. "With me!" Isaac plunged into the tunnel, rebels on his heels. Plasma bolts sizzled past as the bodyguards opened fire. The confines of the tunnel erupted into a brutal close-quarters melee. Isaac slammed his rifle butt into a guard's throat, crushing the windpipe. He sidestepped a thrusting plasma bayonet, snap-drawing his revolver and jamming the muzzle under the alien's chin. The hand cannon roared, painting the tunnel with gore. More guards fell as the rebels pressed forward, hacking and shooting. Isaac waded through the carnage, intent on his prey. He burst into a small chamber, the general's last bastion. The Zorkesh leader stood at the far end, a crackling plasma sword in his fist. His bodyguards lay strewn at Isaac's feet, oozing ichor. The general snarled, his cybernetic eye gleaming with malice. "You think you've won, human? You've already lost." He lunged, plasma sword scything down in a blur. Isaac parried with his Gauss rifle, the blade skittering off the hardened barrel. The general pressed his attack, a dervish of steel and plasma. Isaac backpedaled, rifle bucking as he fired point-blank. The rounds sparked off the general's armor, leaving pock-marked craters. The alien laughed, a hideous electronic sound. Pathetic. The general's sword licked out, carving a sizzling gash across Isaac's cheek. "Your simple human reflexes are no match for Zorkesh augmentation." Isaac felt the cold certainty of death settling over him. The general was right. He couldn't win this, not at hand-to-hand. But maybe. He stepped into the next attack, dropping his rifle and grasping the general's sword arm at the wrist. The superheated plasma seared his flesh, the stink of cooking meat filling the air. Isaac screamed in agony but held on. He wrenched the general forward inside his guard. His free hand dipped to his belt, drawing his combat knife in a reverse grip. The general's eyes widened as Isaac rammed the monomolecular blade up under his chin, punching through meat and metal to skewer his augmented brain. The plasma sword winked out. The general shuddered once, then toppled. Isaac stood over the body, chest heaving, the knife slick with ichor. The pain in his seared hand hit him then, drawing a strangled gasp. He sank to his knees, cradling the ruined flesh. Kraltak limped into the chamber, rebels at his back, many wounded but still on their feet. The alien's eyes found the general's corpse, then rose to meet Isaac's pain-glazed gaze. Something like respect kindled in their depths. "We did it," Isaac corrected, jaw clenched against the agony radiating up his arm. "This is your victory, your people's." Kraltak nodded slowly. "There will be more battles ahead. The Zorkesh will not let this stand." Isaac pushed himself to his feet, teeth bared in a rictus grin. His hand throbbed in time with his pulse, the pain a reminder that he was still alive, still fighting. Outside, in the corridors of the mining complex, rebel shouts of triumph echoed. The first blow had been struck, but Isaac knew in his bones it would not be the last. The war for freedom had only just begun. The roar of alien engines shattered the jungle calm. Isaac looked up, hand going to his revolver, as a massive hydrogen warship descended from the clouds, landing thrusters, flattening trees, and churning the earth. The ship settled on its haunches near the rebel encampment. A ramp slammed down, disgorging a phalanx of heavily armed hydrogen warriors, their exoskeletal armor gleaming. At their head strode a towering figure, his scarred face a thunderhead of barely contained rage. Kalroth, chieftain of Ymir's clan. The rebels grabbed their weapons, spreading out into a defensive perimeter. Kraltak hissed a warning, motioning for his fighters to hold their fire. Isaac stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. "Kalroth, I am Isaac Evans. I fought alongside your son." Isaac met Kalroth's glare unflinching. "Ymir gave his life to save us, to save this planet from the Zorkesh." "You lie!" Kalroth roared, leveling his plasma lance. The rebels tensed, fingers tightening on triggers. Kraltak stepped forward, placing himself between Isaac and the enraged chieftain. "I am Kraltak, leader of this resistance. Your son fought bravely, died with honor. Calroth's jaw worked, but he lowered his weapon fractionally. Isaac pressed on. Ymir made me promise to carry on the fight, to free these people from the Zorkesh. I intend to keep that promise. The chieftain was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he raised his fist to his chest in a Hirogen salute. Ymir chose well. The clan is with you. The warship's hold disgorged a treasure trove of advanced weaponry and supplies. Hirogen warriors, the finest of the clan, joined the rebel ranks. Isaac and Kraltak pored over intelligence reports, a grim picture taking shape. The Zorkesh are preparing to test a new weapon, Kraltak growled. A planet cracker capable of destroying an entire world. Isaac frowned at the grainy reconnaissance photos, a massive cylindrical construct, bristling with energy collectors and graviton projectors. They'll use it to make an example of anyone who defies them. We cannot let that happen. Calroth loomed over the tactical display, a Hirogen warhammer slung at his hip. We strike now. Destroy this abomination before it can be unleashed. A plan took shape. A desperate gambit, but the only chance. Isaac and Calroth would lead a strike team to infiltrate the orbital shipyard where the planet cracker was being assembled. Calroth's warriors would stage a diversion, drawing out the Zorkesh defenders, while Isaac's sabotage unit slipped in to neutralize the weapon. They gathered in the shadow of the Hirogen dropship, a sleek predatory shape of angular black metal. Ion storms raged in the upper atmosphere, a strobing maelstrom that would mask their approach. Isaac and Calroth clasped forearms, a warrior's grip. No words were needed. The ramp lifted, sealing them in the dim red light of the hold. The ship knifed upward, the jungle canopy falling away, the sky bleeding from blue to star-flecked black. The shipyard loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of interlocked modules and scaffolding, swarming with Zorkesh ships. The dropship shuddered as the storm engulfed them, arcs of electricity crawling across the hull. The pilot, a grizzled Hirogen named Anktor, bared his fangs in a feral grin. They'll never see us coming. He angled them towards a maintenance airlock on the station's underbelly. The ship slammed home, docking clamps engaging with a shudder. The ramp dropped, disgorging the strike teams into the bowels of the shipyard. Calroth's warriors peeled off, heading for the station's defense batteries. Isaac led his unit deeper, consulting a stolen schematic on his gauntlet display. The planet cracker was housed in a central assembly chamber, suspended in a web of umbilical tethers and gravitic trusses. Isaac kicked down a sealed hatch, bursting into the planet cracker's control room. A cadre of Zorkesh soldiers whirled to face them. And at their center, a hunched figure in a stained lab coat, the lead scientist. Isaac saw his finger stabbing down on a console. The planet cracker shuddered, a deep resonant hum building in its structure. A hollow display flared to life, red glyphs flickering. No! Isaac charged, smashing a guard aside. He leveled his rifle at the scientist. Abort the firing, now! The Zorkesh laughed, a chittering click. Too late, human. The sequence cannot be stopped. This world will burn, and the Zorkesh will... Isaac's bullet tore through the alien's skull. He leapt to the controls, hands flying over the unfamiliar runes. The hollow display flashed angry red, targeting locks engaged, power levels rising. Isaac's gaze fell on a schematic of the planet cracker's internals. The central power core, a roiling knot of gravitonic energy, the source of the weapon's world-shattering might. He turned to his team, jaw set. Keep them off me. Then he ran, diving through a maintenance hatch, clambering down access ladders into the planet cracker's guts. Heat washed over him, the air shimmering. Conduits pulsed with lambent energy. At the heart of the chamber, suspended in a lattice of crackling force fields and pulsing tethers, hung the power core, a sphere of roiling darkness that hurt the eyes. Isaac opened his gauntlet, accessing the core's monitoring systems. He couldn't shut it down. But he could unbalance it, destabilize the containment fields. The core would tear itself apart. And take half the station with it. Sweat stung his eyes. He entered a string of commands overriding safety protocols, redlining power flow. Alerts flashed, a rising keen of warning klaxons. The sphere pulsed, waves of distortion rippling from its surface. Hairline cracks spread across the containment tethers. The sphere shivered, a mote of pure darkness straining to be free. The explosion ripped through the station, a maelstrom of light and fury. Across the star system, astronavigational sensors registered the flare, a spike of impossible brightness. The shipyard crumpled in on itself, consumed in a miniature sun. Zorkesh ships frantically undocked, fleeing the inferno. The planet Cracker, the pride of the Empire, vanished in the incandescent storm. And in that fire-streaked sky, no trace of a human soldier. A man who had given his all for a people and a cause not his own. Smoke and debris billowed from the shattered ruins of the Zorkesh shipyard. Rebel soldiers and Harajan warriors picked through the twisted metal, searching for any sign of Isaac. But they found only charred wreckage and smoldering craters. "Over here," Calroth called, hefting a slab of blasted hull plating. But there was nothing beneath it but more rubble. In the distance, the whine of Zorkesh engines grew louder. Dropships and gunships inbound to secure the site. Kreltak hissed, his hand tightening on his rifle. "We must go now." Calroth looked back at the ruins, his jaw clenched. But he nodded. They could not win this fight, not here, not now. The rebels and Hirajan faded into the jungle as the Zorkesh ships descended, disgorging troops to comb the wreckage. They had struck a mighty blow, but the cost had been high. At a hidden rebel outpost deep in the mountains, the survivors gathered to regroup and mourn the fallen. Kraltak stood before a holomap, the locations of key Zorkesh bases glowing red. "The planet Cracker is destroyed," he said, his voice heavy. "The Empire is reeling. We must press the attack now while they are weakened." "And what of Isaac?" Anktor rumbled. The big Hirajan's fists clenched. What was his sacrifice for? Kraltak bowed his head. "He gave everything for our people. We will honor him by finishing what he started. We will drive the Zorkesh from our—" A commotion at the entrance cut him off. Shouts, a scuffle. Then a figure stumbled into the room, a tattered, bloody mess. Calroth surged to his feet. "Impossible!" It was Isaac. His armor scorched and dented, his flesh burned, but alive. The human grinned, though it came out as more of a grimace. "Missed me." The rebels and Hirajan erupted into cheers, swarming around Isaac, clapping him on the back. He swayed on his feet, clearly exhausted, but his eyes burned with the same determination that had carried them this far. "Nearly was," Isaac said. "Managed to seal myself in a maintenance pod at the last second. Ejected clear of the worst of it. Been making my way back since." He straightened, wincing. "But there's no time to rest. We've got the Zorkesh on the back foot. We need to hit them again, hard and fast." Calroth nodded. "What do you propose?" Isaac limped to the holomap, enlarging a schematic of a heavily fortified structure. "This is the central communication hub for the entire planet. Every Zorkesh transmission, every encoded order, it all goes through here." He turned to the assembled rebels and Hirajan, a fierce light in his eyes. "We take this hub, we can broadcast the truth of what the Empire has done, the destruction they've wrought, the lives they've stolen. We can light the spark of rebellion across the whole damn world." Kraltak chittered eagerly. "A simultaneous assault. We strike the hub while rebel cells across the planet hit every Zorkesh stronghold, liberate every slave camp." "Exactly," Isaac said. "We turn their own communication network against them, and we burn their rule to ash." The details of the plan came together quickly. Strike teams assigned, targets marked, timetables synced. Isaac would lead the attack on the communication hub, with Kraltak and Calroth commanding the planet-wide offensive. As the rebel ships rocketed through the atmosphere, Isaac double-checked his weapons, his armor, the scars of his last battle still fresh on his body and in his mind. Anktor stomped up beside him, a Hirajan heavy rifle cradled in his massive arms. "I am with you, human, until the end." Isaac nodded, meeting the alien's fierce gaze. "Let's make it count." The hub loomed ahead, a blocky black structure bristling with defenses. Plasma cannons swiveled to track the incoming ships. Zorkesh soldiers swarmed like ants, taking up firing positions. The rebels hit them like a hammer blow. Drop pods smashed into the courtyard, disgorging rebel troops and Hyrogen warriors into the teeth of the enemy guns. The air flickered with energy bolts and the bark of Goss rifles. Isaac charged into the fray, his weapon bucking as he put precise bursts into Zorkesh heads. Anktor rampaged at his side, his rifle scything down aliens by the dozen. They blasted their way into the facility, rebels pouring in behind them. The tight confines erupted into a brutal close-quarters melee, rifle butts and bayonets, claws and fists and spilled blood. Isaac fought like a man possessed, never stopping, never slowing. One goal consuming him, the central broadcast room. They emerged into a cavernous chamber, dominated by a towering spire studded with communications arrays, and at its base, a phalanx of elite Zorkesh bodyguards, flanking a single robed figure, the Minister of Propaganda. Isaac raised his rifle, aiming down the sights at the alien's head. I've heard that before. The battle was short and savage. The rebel force smashed into the bodyguards, a clash of wills and blood. Isaac pressed forward relentlessly, cutting down aliens to left and right, eyes locked on the minister. The Zorkesh leader backpedaled, screeching orders, his guards falling around him. Isaac bore down on him, unstoppable, implacable. The minister's back hit the control panel, nowhere left to run. Isaac jammed his rifle under the alien's chin, his finger tightening on the trigger. The minister's eyes bulged with fear. Isaac's jaw clenched. You can't give me back what I've lost. He pulled the trigger. The minister's head snapped back, ichor spraying. Isaac stepped over the body, slamming a data drive into the control panel. The intel they'd gathered, the proof of the Zorkesh's crimes, all of it, broadcasting on every frequency, to every corner of the planet. The truth, raw and ugly and undeniable, laid bare for all to see. The spark of rebellion fanned to an inferno. Across the planet, the people rose up. Slaves breaking their chains, workers downing tools, soldiers turning their guns on their masters. 1,000 years of oppression and fear and rage, unleashed in a single searing moment of defiance. The Zorkesh Empire, stretched thin, beset on all sides, began to buckle. Its armies falling back, its leaders fleeing or falling to the wrath of those they had subjugated for so long. In the central chamber of the communications hub, surrounded by the bodies of the fallen, Isaac watched it all unfold on the flickering hollow screens. A rebel soldier, his face streaked with blood and grime, looked to the human. What now? Isaac turned to him, a ghost of a smile on his lips. Now we finish this. As the Zorkesh Empire crumbled under the weight of the rebel onslaught, a massive fleet of warships dropped out of hyperspace above the planet. At their head was the Emperor himself, his flagship an obsidian wedge bristling with weapons. The Emperor's image flickered to life on every view screen, his face a mask of cold rage. "Rebels and alien filth," he hissed. "You have defied the might of the Zorkesh for the last time. Surrender now, or watch your world burn." On the planet's surface, Isaac and the rebel leaders gathered around a hollow table, watching the Emperor's transmission with grim expressions. Kalroth snarled, his claws flexing. "We should strike now while we have the chance. End this once and for all." The Emperor's image sneered. "You human, you have been a thorn in my side for too long. I challenge you to single combat. Face me if you dare, and I will grant your pitiful rebellion a quick death." The rebel command center erupted into shouting. Some called for Isaac to accept, to strike down the hated Emperor. Others warned of a trap. Isaac raised his hand for silence. A hush fell over the room. Kraltak stepped forward, his compound eyes narrowed. "Isaac, you can't. It's suicide." Isaac met the alien's gaze. "If I don't, he'll raise the planet from orbit. This way we have a chance." He turned to the Emperor's sneering visage. "I'll face you on one condition. We fight on the ground in sight of both our armies. Let them see who is the stronger." The Emperor's lipless mouth curved in a cruel smile. "So be it, human. Prepare to die." The transmission cut out. Isaac turned to his allies, his expression grim. "Gather the troops. We end this today one way or another." The two armies faced each other across a barren plain, the rebel forces backed by the towering figures of the Hirogen warriors. The Emperor stood at the head of the Zorkesh legions, his armor a blaze of cruel spikes and glowing circuitry. Isaac stepped forward, his battered combat armor seeming drab in comparison, but his eyes were steel, his jaw set with determination. The Emperor raised his hand, a crackling plasma blade extending from his gauntlet. Isaac drew his combat knife, the blade seeming woefully small in comparison. They circled each other, the Emperor's movements fluid and precise, Isaac's stance low and coiled. The Emperor lunged, plasma blade humming. Isaac sidestepped, the superheated edge sizzling past his head. The Emperor pressed the attack, his blade a blur of slashes and thrusts. Isaac gave ground, parrying with his knife, the metal scorched and pitted by the plasma's touch. The Emperor laughed, his voice distorted by his helm speakers. "Pathetic. Is this the best the rebellion has to offer?" Isaac didn't respond, his focus absolute. He ducked a decapitating slash rolling under the Emperor's guard, his knife licked out, scoring a line across the alien's armored thigh. The Emperor hissed in pain and rage. "Enough!" The Emperor's free hand shot out, unleashing a crackling torrent of energy. Isaac was blasted back, his armor smoking. He hit the ground hard, rolling to his feet. The Emperor advanced, plasma blade raised for the killing blow. Isaac charged to meet him. At the last moment he dropped into a slide, passing under the Emperor's strike. His knife flashed, burying itself to the hilt in the gap beneath the Emperor's breastplate. The alien ruler staggered, dark ichor gushing from the wound. Isaac rolled to his feet, snatching up the Emperor's fallen plasma blade. The Emperor sank to his knees, clawing at the knife in his chest. He looked up at Isaac, his eyes blazing with hate. "You think you've won, human?" He coughed, more blood spattering his armor. "You've doomed yourself and this whole pathetic planet." The Emperor's gauntlet flashed, a hologram springing to life above his palm. It showed the Zorkesh fleet in orbit, each ship pulsing with an ominous red light. "Antimatter bombs," the Emperor wheezed, "rigged to my life signs. When I die, they detonate. You've killed us all." Isaac stared at the hologram, his mind racing. The Emperor was telling the truth. He could see it in the alien's pain-glazed eyes. But the rebel forces were surging forward, Kraltak and Kalroth at their head. They had seen Isaac's victory, and their blood was up. "Isaac," Kraltak called, his voice triumphant, "you've done it. The Emperor is defeated." "No," Isaac shouted. "Stay back. If he dies, the planet dies with him." Kalroth snarled, raising his warhammer. "Lies! The Zorkesh dog is trying to trick you." The rebels and Hirogen pushed forward, weapons raised. Isaac stood over the fallen Emperor, his arms spread. "I won't let you do this. Stand down. That's an order." Kraltak's compound eyes narrowed. "You would defend this monster after all he's done?" "I'm trying to save us all," Isaac pleaded. "Please, you have to trust me." But he could see in their eyes that they couldn't. Their hate for the Zorkesh ran too deep. Kalroth leveled his hammer at Isaac's chest. "Step aside, human, or share his fate." Isaac's grip tightened on the plasma blade. He looked down at the Emperor, seeing the malevolent glee in the alien's fading eyes. He had to make a choice, and he had to make it now. Isaac charged, plasma blade flashing. He clove through the haft of Kalroth's hammer, the superheated edge searing the Hirogen's flesh. Kalroth howled in pain and rage, staggering back. Isaac spun, the blade a humming blur as he parried a volley of blaster fire from the rebel soldiers. He hated this, hated fighting those he had bled beside, but he had no choice. "Get back!" he roared, placing himself between the Emperor and the enraged mob. "I won't let you damn us all." He fought like a man possessed, the plasma blade an extension of his will. Rebels and Hirogen fell before him, not dead but maimed, unable to continue the fight. Isaac battled his way to the Emperor's side, snatching a medical kit from a fallen Zorkesh medic. He worked frantically, stemming the flow of ichor from the Emperor's chest, forcing stimulants and coagulants into the alien system. The Emperor's eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain and confusion. "Why?" he rasped. "I'm not doing it for you," Isaac growled. "I'm doing it for them." He hauled the Emperor to his feet, the plasma blade humming inches from the alien ruler's throat. "Order your ships to disarm the bombs now." The Emperor glared at him with undisguised loathing, but he could see the human's resolve. Slowly, painfully, he raised his gauntlet and input a series of commands. On the hologram, the pulsing red lights faded one by one. The ships hung in space, weapons powered down, no longer a threat. Then the Emperor began to laugh, a hideous gurgling sound. "You fool," he spat. "You think I would let you win so easily?" The Emperor's gauntlet flashed again, a sickly green light pulsing from its circuits. Isaac felt a sudden stabbing pain in his chest. He looked down to see a thin dart protruding from his armor, its tip glistening with some noxious liquid. "Neurotoxin," the Emperor hissed. "My final gift to you, human." Isaac staggered, his vision blurring. He could feel the poison coursing through his veins, his heart stuttering in his chest. With the last of his strength, he drove the plasma blade through the Emperor's black heart. The alien ruler convulsed, his eyes going wide and glassy. Then he slumped to the ground, a charred hole smoking in his chest. Isaac collapsed beside him, the strength fleeing from his limbs. Dimly he heard shouts of alarm, saw Kraltak and Kalroth running towards him. Too late, he thought. Too late for him, but not for them. As darkness claimed him, Isaac's last thought was of the rebels, of the Hirogen, of all those he had fought to save. They were free now, free to rebuild, to chart their own destiny. Years later, a statue stood in the heart of the rebel capital. It depicted a human soldier, rifle in hand, standing tall and proud against a backdrop of stars. At its base was a simple inscription. Children would play around its base, their laughter ringing through the streets, and old soldiers, Hirogen and rebel alike, would pause before it, their eyes misting as they remembered the man who had brought them victory and paid the ultimate price. Isaac's sacrifice would never be forgotten. His name would echo through the ages, a testament to the indomitable human spirit and the lengths one man would go to protect those he held dear. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.